today we are going to have two speakers, and it's going to be about the leadership, building the future, what we need to do to build the future. And those speakers are they ready at the door? Ready, Eddie? We have Alexandria Harris and Lisa Francoeur.
Hello. How y'all doing? You made it through. Now we're gonna jump super far apart.
I know, I don't like that. Bring it in. It's sisters. Soul sisters.
So I don't know if your career has been anything like mine. Then you have these like kismet moments where you know you're where you're supposed to be. You're where you're supposed to be right now. You're about to experience gems from Lisa Francoeur that will literally blow your mind. So let me tell you about her. She was top 50 most influential voices in crypto in the world. Wow. The world. Top 5 female CEOs in crypto. 5. Top 5 founders that are influential in driving Web3. Top 5. She's considered the Oprah of tech.
Oh! I'm like, this person sounds cool!
She has had every major tech company seek her thought partnership. Truly. She went to University of North Carolina at Greensboro.
Yes! And she's memorizing this. It's like, whoa.
I know it. She's a New Yorker.
Yup. You already know.
She's a part of the Haitian American Hall of Fame.
You follow me? I stand.
She was a fashion stylist previously.
I know that's hard to believe.
No, it's not hard to believe, especially that outfit.
Right.
And she has,
We're basically getting married today. I propose today.
but here, so she has 10 plus years experience in enterprise sales, including leading 2 startups to 7-figure valuations just in revenue. So we can get into that too. We are really in for a treat, and the thing that I want to make sure I don't forget is she's currently the co-founder and chief revenue officer of Crypto Tutors, which is an award-winning Web3 education startup. So we're really about to get into this, but I have to first start. Why do they call you the Oprah of tech? Tell us about
Oh gosh, you know when people say that, it's like, oh. Because that's like such the gravitas associated with, or the orders of magnitude associated with that designation. I do not take it lightly, and I'm very humbled to have, a moniker that has that kind of impact. And so I am someone who is extremely mindful of my vision, which is scaling empowerment globally. And I think that Oprah has done a phenomenal, incredible job of building her entire empire, dynasty, with that at the forefront. And so when I think about North Star, that is what I think. But with respect to the work that I've done that aligns to the empowerment work that Oprah has done, I've interviewed a number of CEOs, the CEO of Slack, multi-billion-dollar entities, and we've not just spoken about how do you scale a multi-billion, in some instances trillion-dollar enterprise, but how are you ensuring that you're creating space for people that look like us? What are your inclusion strategies to ensure that your user base is reflected in your employee base? And so those kind of conversations began a buzz around me as the Oprah of tech, but again, it stemmed from having a very clear understanding of the power that each of us wields in challenging these executives, often white males, to hear what we have to say and use that information in actionable ways to create more opportunities for inclusivity, for diversity. And so, yeah.
I love that. This is a lot connected to the work I do at Google with racial equity, and I'm really interested in knowing, particularly at this stage, how you even got into crypto. Like, what made you pivot?
It's hurtful. Well, it's interesting that you say that. So you mentioned, me being Haitian, and like that's a very significant aspect to, my entity. And, when I think about my lineage, I think about, the Haitian Revolution dismantled the transatlantic slave trade. When I think about my lineage, I think about a people who refused to accept oppression and were willing to put their lives on the line and sacrifice their lives to ensure that that was not the world that we lived in. And so crypto is very disruptive. I've always chosen very disruptive industries. Coming into tech, a fashion stylist, transitioning into tech and being, at the forefront of the future. When I think about the, tech and crypto, I look at tech as a macrocosm and crypto as a microcosm. And what I mean by that is emerging tech has been the next frontier as far as the epicenter of innovation. And so I always had the mindset of like a futurist. And with that, in 2020, this is after like a decade of selling enterprise software. I am assistant sales for real, so I already know. You're our chief revenue officer, but I need to over-index on that part because we stay close to the money.
Yeah.
But I had sold enterprise software for startups, helped pioneer the tech ecosystem in New York City. Started my career in 2008, got recruited to LinkedIn. 2014, started my career there in 2015, and that was where I spent the lion's share of my corporate career. And always by virtue of being a Black female in an industry where we were grossly underrepresented, I always had this desire, this like conviction, this commitment to ensuring I contributed to the solution and not the problem. Creating opportunities for more of us to come into these spaces and places and not just be there, but how do you foster upward mobility within these corporate entities? And so with the crypto aspect, I had left LinkedIn in 2019 for my first startup venture, which was a diversity recruiting firm that specialized in bringing more Black and Latinx talent specifically into the industry. And so as head of partnerships, I would, we brought on with myself at the helm, Airbnb and Slack. I interviewed the CEO of Slack. That's another example of Open Tech. But I say that to say, scale that entity to $1 million company with 4 people in less than 12 months. Wow. And I was like, okay, bet, like if I could do it for, this organization, I could do it for whatever's next. And so, my best friend and co-founder of Crypto Tutors, Nina Blankenship, we met at LinkedIn in 2015, thick of thieves, very much aligned with respect to our commitment to wanting to create more opportunities and inclusivity, prioritizing diversity and what have you. And so we always bonded on that. I also organized, it really gained traction at LinkedIn, and I'm saying this to give you the backstory. It's really important that you have context. You have tangible, actionable takeaways in this conversation. That's why I'm being as descriptive, because it's with the intention of ensuring you understand the schematics. If you walk away with the blueprint, if you walk away with bits and pieces of my blueprint, and you can build your own, that's what success looks like. So I just wanted to set the stage with that. But crypto, Nina and I were talking middle of the pandemic. It's like June, July of 2020. And she's like, Lisa, you're all about empowerment. At LinkedIn, I used to host this positivity lunch called Fancyfied Fridays. But we could talk about entrepreneurship as well, because that's also important. But I used to host these positivity lunches, and she was like my ace boon coon. Like, she was like, you're not going to Fancyfied Fridays. And so the whole premise was like, helping people shift their energy before going into the weekend, a period of respite, making sure that they ended the week on a high note. So again, in the vein of empowerment, you shaking your head, I see you, sis, okay. But in the vein of scaling empowerment globally, these are different examples of what that looks like. So fast forward to June, July 2020, and she's like, you always talk about empowerment, I want to introduce you to Mwedi, who's our third co-founder. I'm Haitian American, Nina's Japanese American, and Mwedi's Zimbabwe American. Now you have 2 nations in particular that know what hyperinflation is. Yeah. We have 2 nations that experience the debasement of our currencies. You've got, 2 nations, actually all of our countries have had some, issues with hyperinflation. And Haiti, for example, is a country that 20% of our GDP comes from remittances. The money that we send back home. Now that's super critical because, to the storyline, because blockchain technology is the tech that props up crypto. Now, blockchain is a distributed network of global computers, and these global computers operate independently, and so they validate transactions by calculating mathematical formulas, and before a new block of data can be added, it has to be verified across this distributed network. And so with that, when we talk about remittances, it proved to be one of the most powerful use cases of how blockchain technology could solve real human problems. And so Nina was like, let's talk to Moedi and understand how that all works. So being in spaces that democratize access to wealth and wealth building, that truly resonates with me. So when it came to getting into crypto, and you know, when we say crypto, like, that's only one facet of like the Web3 world, which encompasses digital currencies. Crypto is one of the aspects of digital currencies. You also have central bank digital currencies and stable coins and NFTs. You have the metaverse, etc. So I just want to make sure I clarify that crypto tutors, it's not just crypto. But to make a long story less long, because I hate to be long-winded, which I was, but forgive me, got into crypto because the democratization of access to wealth and wealth building, once I could connect those dots, I was like, yo, this is where we want, this is where we need to be. And Nina, you know, she was really like pushing me, like, look, honestly, if we were to combine our superpowers, Moedi, our third co-founder, he's a PhD in statistics. He had the first penny auction to accept Bitcoin as payment. He's an algorithmic trader and trades utilities for Fortune 100. Nina is a media guru, one of the top sales performers at LinkedIn. You know, she's a LinkedIn learning instructor. You know, enterprise, you know, sales, corporate training. I've developed mental models, you know, and rendered them in form of corporate training for organizations like Salesforce, AMC Networks, Microsoft. And so she said, if we combine our superpowers, imagine what this could be. And I said, wow, that's like such a crazy concept. It seems so, especially in the midst of the pandemic, like kind of ridiculous. It's like, who starts a company, in the middle of this like global catastrophe?
Right.
And the value prop in terms of what we could offer humanity, especially underrepresented communities, was enough motivation for me to say, I want it. And so, you know, when we tried to onboard ourselves, because Moedi, PhD, mind you, we tried to onboard ourselves, you know, to the world of Web3, crypto, blockchain, etc., it was mad complicated. And so Nina and I were like, okay, like, it's a 5 steps according to Moedi. It's a handful of steps, like, okay, we could do that. You know, we're pretty smart, we like to think. Up until we realized we weren't. So, you know, it was a tremendous learning curve. So we go to YouTube University to try to implement the steps. You know what I'm talking about. They're like, yo, if it's free, it's for me. But you get what you pay for, because there's a lot of shady mofos on YouTube University. And I'm gonna keep it 100. There wasn't a lot of people that looked like us that were leading the conversation. And so that in and of itself made us realize if we're having this issue, other people are having this issue. And so that was the genesis of Crypto Tutors.
Wow. So I look at this audience and I think about the economy right now, and you talk about in the middle of the pandemic and being able to be so kind of visionary and a futurist and seeing around the corner. What advice do you have for this group to see around the corner and be future-proof in this economy?
I think that that's a great question. And like the reality is that automation is, you know, you're already starting to see, especially, you know, big tech companies doing tons of layoffs. So I always pose the question to folks, my man in the back, he's like, yup, you already know what's up. But, you know, I always like to think about what's going to make you, I pose the question, what's going to make you indispensable? We know what's going to make us expendable, but what's going to make us indispensable? And so, you know, there are a variety of studies, I just gave a talk on this on Saturday, that speak to, interestingly enough, the soft skills. The number one, according to the World Economic Forum, skill set that companies are looking for are analytical skills. And, you know, communication is super critical as well, because that's something, there's so much nuance to communication. And so being able to refine your ability to articulate an idea, to communicate the idea, is very, very important. And in the vein of being indispensable, AI is not going to take your job. It's the people that know how to use it will. Okay, that's wonderful. So, you know, I say that to say, like, understand what the indispensable skills are that are going to, you know, prevent you from being replaced by a machine.
Yeah.
What will give you a competitive advantage is understanding also your unique value proposition. You know, I've conceptualized a theory that is officially like a mental modality, I talked about it in the beginning, called authentic intelligence,
Yeah.
the new AI. The new AI. Exactly. He said, I saw the head cock. But authentic intelligence is rooted to the fact that each of us has a unique genetic makeup. And so with that premise at the forefront of our minds, why would we not want to believe that we also have a unique value proposition to offer the world? And so with that understanding, I employ folks to have clarity around their vision, their mission, their values. And with that, you can start to build a foundation to crystallize your unique value proposition. I also encourage you to have a personal board of directors. You know, like these are not just mentors. I want to make the distinction even between an executive sponsor and a mentor. Like mentor, you say, yes, you know what I'm talking about, especially in these big corporate structures. Mentor, you know, you can confide in and like you can be uninhibitedly, you know, like honest about stuff. But your executive sponsor, there is in the vein of understanding how communication can be leveraged to your advantage. An executive sponsor is somebody that is going to be in the rooms that we're not in and advocating and evangelizing you on your behalf. And so understanding that dynamic, right? And even asking for constructive feedback with respect to what are my unique gifts and talents? Where are, you know, the blind spots that I need to work on tweaking and I need to focus on upskilling? You know, you really want to have an honest conversation with yourself around, you know, my strengths, my weaknesses, but then having that validated by, you know, your personal board of directors, individuals that were selected as a result of knowing that you can ask those hard questions, get that hard feedback, and then apply it accordingly. And have them also evaluate your approach, tweak it. So when we talk about authentic intelligence, the new AI portion comes from being in a state of perpetual optimization. Because as you are extrapolating the insights in relation to how your strategy has unfolded, you can see what tweaks need to be made. And as a result of understanding those tweaks, you can develop a strategy to work through those tweaks, develop a strategy to continuously improve. And that is what will keep you indispensable.
So you've talked to me. You've talked to me about the next industrial revolution.
Yes.
I would love for you to tell this audience about like what you anticipate in tech right now. What's the next wave that's coming?
So that's a really good question, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because according to the World Economic Forum, again, we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, the digital revolution. And this is a revolution where we are already anticipating it, we've already seen it, how automation is eliminating a lot of jobs, but PwC speaks to the millions of jobs that are going to be created that don't even necessarily exist right now. So with respect to, you know, a futurist mentality, I would say that, you know, if you look at a continuum of emerging tech, you'll see that AI is like on the kind of end of the spectrum. So this is sort of like already materializing in like actionable ways from an individual to enterprise level. But as we move along the continuum, you start getting into Web3. And so, you know, like you haven't seen blockchain, for example, being integrated to the extent that it will be. But it's really important to understand, like I explained blockchain super high level. There are several blockchains. There's a difference between centralized and decentralized. I explained decentralized. Centralized is just like one entity that is like governing the chain. But I say that to say, you know, when I think about the future, I think about how is humanity going to interact with each other? You know, like communication and the way that we interact. You've seen a level of globalization that humanity has never ever experienced. And so we don't just work within the silo of a city, a state, a country. We work in a we exist in a global environment. And so when I think about the future, I also think about continents like Africa. Because when you look at the youth, I think the majority, I forget what percentage it is, but the majority of the world's youth resides in Africa. So when we start thinking about ways to ensure that we're preparing accordingly, we gotta look big picture. We gotta look 10, 20, 100 years from now. I charge you with that. I invite you to really embrace what the future looks like, because you can reverse engineer from there. So for me, it's really important that the emerging markets, they're leapfrogging. They're not gonna be on laptops, they're, handheld devices, their phones, like that's where everything is happening. So with that understanding, how well versed are you in like mobile optimization? How well versed are we in mobile engagement? How well versed are we in the nuances associated with these emerging markets, for example, in terms of like what folks care about, and like having a better understanding of what humans need gives you a better understanding of utility.
Yes.
And when you think about even adoption, like ChatGPT, for example, how many of us use ChatGPT? If you don't, you need to. Or Bard, excuse me, I forgot where I was at. Bard, you already know. Can you edit that? Forgive me. But okay, we'll leave it at that. But I said it to say, in using ChatGPT as an example, when you look at the adoption rate, 100 million users in 2 months, which was the fastest adoption rate of any tech in history. Okay? So, but when you think about it, why? What was the impetus behind that level of adoption? Frictionless. It was super simple. It was a very, you run your searches on Google, everyone has been conditioned for that behavior. So ChatGPT, what were you doing differently other than, instead of maybe a search query, asking it a question, which made it more conversational? And so understanding how to use these technologies to our advantage. They say that AI, from a productivity standpoint, I think it's Nielsen, 66% increase in productivity for folks who are using AI. So, like these tools at our disposal can help us understand even like, what are you thinking the future holds for a sales professional who is an X industry? Like, there's so many different ways you can slice and dice that answer, which is why I didn't want to like tell you this is how it is. I want to invite you to think about it and really like ruminate, because it's different for each of us. And so again, for me, I'm thinking about the emerging markets. I'm thinking about, what are the new technologies that are being built based on utility that I can align myself to, I can upskill my understanding of, etc. So, we're living in a world where things are moving at lightning speed. And so I encourage us to be as open-minded. I think that's one of the best actual skills that you can have. Being open-minded and not being intimidated. Or maybe I should say being courageous. Because being courageous means that you are able to act in the face of fear. People say fearlessness. That's not real. Biologically, like physiologically, like we're wired in a way that fear protects us from being like eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That's not the thing. But you know what I'm saying? Like you need fear. But the thing is, you want to leverage. It's another tool that you have at your disposal that you can harness, because acting in the face of fear is the space that we need to play in.
I love it.
I love you. You saw my wedding dress. Let's go.
So I'm curious, you've talked about a personal mission. I'd like to know what yours is and also how you manage the business of you.
Okay, well, I'm also somebody that like developed a system of self-governance. And so like part of the foundation of my system of self-governance, and when we talk about like corporate trainings that I do, and even other talks like this that I give, I always circle back to this. But it starts with your vision, mission, values. And so let me start with mine. So I have a vision of scaling empowerment globally. My mission is to help people harness the power of positivity, authenticity, and unity to create new and favorable possibilities for themselves and others. And my values are to uplift, empower, inspire, and unite. And so with that...
I love it.
Right?
Period. Okay, continue. I love it. So good.
And I do love each of you. You know, I always say that I lead with love because you get what you give. And so even having that level of clarity with respect to how do I want to show up in the world, irrespective of a professional, personal environment, those parameters have given me a North Star. They've given me a sense of what I won't, what I will and won't do if it's not within those parameters. And so that in and of itself, like just starting from there, has helped me make better decisions. Because my decision-making criteria is rooted in those parameters, those guidelines. And it's like a system of self-governance. Think about that, right? Like having a systematic approach to anything is how things get done most efficiently, most streamlined. And so to expedite the decision-making has also been beneficial. Brian, you with me, girl? I'm gonna give you a hug later. I'm gonna give everybody a hug who wants one. I have so much love in my heart to give, but I'm nice as well, not. But I say that to say, like, having that system has allowed me to be and make the hard decisions. You know what I mean? Like, everybody talks about who's like an entrepreneur. Because being an entrepreneur, like, it's cool, you got a lot of freedom, but freedom ain't free, okay? And what I mean by that is, like, you know, I'm system sales. Like, you know, when you're making those kind of deals for these tech companies, you already know what those checks look like. So to walk away, you know, and just be like, this part of my life is done. You know, this part of my life is over because of the fact that I have a vision of scaling empowerment globally. And one of the practical applications of scaling empowerment globally is financial empowerment. And so when I think about the work we do at Crypto Tutors, it's with that understanding. We're building a company that is, you know, it's a capitalist company. I mean, you know, we are capitalists, but we're like social capitalists in the sense that we understand how us winning doesn't mean you losing. And we want to play in the space of win-win-win. But as we're building, you know, I'm proud to say that our company is, I like to say, revenue-backed because we didn't take no external money. We own 100% of it. But what that comes with is like, I'm not making those big checks that I was right now. And you know, this is like our 3rd year in business, and operating with those principles has enabled us to retain ownership, which is super important, has enabled us to build a business validated with our Web3 curriculum by Fortune 500s, has enabled us to walk away from capital, because we were on Shark Tank. I mean, I'm not saying anything about anything, but I'm just saying, not all money is good, not all capital is good, you know? But it has given us a level of like integrity.
Yes.
And it has allowed me to like continue to live my vision, mission, values, which is why I'm here today. Because I say what I mean, and I mean what I say.
So we
Period. With a T.
So we see you here in this gorgeous dress. You have so
I got
much.
dressed up for you. Just kidding, I'm fancy.
And you have so much like bubbliness and such a core of love. But I'm sure, and I know, you've experienced a lot of adversity.
Oh, that's such a great question.
And I want to know how that shaped you and also how you've pushed through in those really tough times.
You gotta sigh for this one. Honestly, like, I think part of the reason why, like, even with the concept of Fancyfied and just, you know, I give what I never got. You know, and this is really important. So I'm gonna go deep here. Is that okay? Can we like really like, it's a very intimate. You know, I grew up in a really abusive household. And I'm not saying that my family intended to be, you know, abusive. I just think, you know, my family emigrated to this country in like the late 60s and 70s in the midst of, you know, they were seeking political asylum. There was a dictator that was like massacring people, and there was this massive brain drain from Haiti. Saying that to say, like, there was a lot of trauma, you know? And so this is 42-year-old me thinking, you know, reconciling the past. But, you know, I experienced that trauma because it was transferred. And, you know, I recognized that they didn't necessarily know how to be better. And so, you know, like, I got hit a lot. You know, I got called crazy, you know, because I was super eclectic and like a very, I'm multifaceted, I mean, we're all multifaceted, but I'm like very multifaceted. And it was like children are meant to be seen and not heard. And, you know, my mom had my sister and I very, very young, and it was like disgrace to the family. So saying all that to say, there was a lot of like elements that made the environment that I grew up in super toxic. And so because of that, you know, I married a man whose toxicity wasn't like, oh, I wasn't aware of how toxic he was because I had been so desensitized to the toxicity. And so I always say trauma not transformed is trauma transferred. And so like the first, like the, you know, 2/3 of my life, you know, I was in very abusive, toxic environments because I just didn't know any better. You know, I just thought like, this is how it is. And so in the vein of overcoming adversity, I was very fortunate that God put like a spirit in me that was very like alchemist oriented. You know, like how do you reconstitute negativity into positivity? And that was something that like I just sort of innately had in me. And I think it's because although my family and like really the closest people to me were like the most like abusive outside, you know, like I connected with people. Like even as a kid, like I wasn't trying to be like the president of the class or because I was always super wild and you can't like me sitting down and I'm like moving around like in my seat. I've always been super hyper. So like the kids in my class, they were like, "You're really dope," and I'd be like, "That's so confusing because everybody hates people." But that gave me a like different experience, and so the dichotomy of being in an environment that I came from that was so abusive, but then being in other environments where people saw my light, I started to realize there are differences here. Like as a child, like, oh, I want to be in the light. I don't want to be in the dark. And I would run away from home at like 16. I have one of my homegirls here who, you know, I'd run away to her house and she'd protect me. And, you know, it's like a real thing. But I say all that to say, in the vein of avoiding life traps, there's this great book, gosh, it's escaping me, I don't know the name, but Life Traps is, I think it's called, that's the title. I realized that when my ex-husband, he cheated on me, and we had been married for we had been together for 15 years, from the time I was 23 till the time I was 38. They had been married for almost 13 years. And I always said, if you cheat on me and I know definitively, that's it. That's the one thing that you can do that I will like never forgive you for. So he did that, and apparently had been doing that throughout our marriage and kind of took advantage of my naivete, 10 plus years older than me, and like saw like my light and was like, okay, like I can manipulate and control. And again, not saying that this was intentional, saying trauma not transformed is trauma transferred. And so even going back to my Haitian lineage, I'm a disruptor. I'm a disruptor of patterns. And so when I found out that he was cheating, yes, it was difficult, but that was the end of it. And so coming out of that, and literally it's called my Tina Turner moment, all of her Kathleen's back there, she already knows. I walked away from everything. I walked away from the house, the cars, the apartment. I walked away from everything. And I did that because I couldn't let anyone kill my spirit. I didn't let my family do it as a kid. I damn sure wasn't gonna let a man do it. And so in recognizing that, I severed ties. And by virtue of making that decision to walk away, it gave me a lot of time to reflect. And that period of solitude gave me a lot of insights about who I was. And it also showed me that I was perpetuating a cycle of abuse because I had become so desensitized to it, having grown up in an abusive household. And so once I connected those dots, I was able to be more intentional about putting myself in environments where there was light. And so from my friends, my friend groups, to the company that we started, to all the Fancyfied, all these things, they just reinforced the decision I had made to live in the light. And it was knowing the pattern and being willing to disrupt that pattern and introduce a new pattern that was rooted in my mission, vision, and values.
Period.
Period.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to open up the floor for questions.
Took you to church.
You really did. I was like, drop the mic. Literally, thank you for being so vulnerable. Because
I know, I'm feeling it in my heart, and I'm like, that was scary. Okay.
But a lot of times people will come to these places and just be really one note. But we're all people who've had dynamic lives, and it's important to just be honest. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for like being, like, I feel a lot of love. I hope I don't cry.
No, it's okay.
You can cry.
Yeah, you can.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Here's that.
We're gonna hold this space for you.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
I feel the love, and like, you know, I'm a real motherfucker. You know, like, it's true, like, I have this thing, it's like I want to leave people better off after they've encountered me than prior to. And also in like having had experiences, especially growing up and being so young and impressionable, and like being in abusive environments and not adopting that as my way of being.
Yes.
You know, like that's really important to know, that like you can be the change that you want to see. And so I want you to know, like, it's not like a path, it's the path of most resistance that gets you to paradise.
Yeah. It's so good. Does anyone have a question in the back?
Yeah, I just want to comment and say thank you so much for just shedding light like on the gift of transmutation. That's exactly what you're talking about. I just found out that I'm also a patient lineage.
Okay, yep. You gonna start a revolution? They gonna be like, wow, where you come from? You're like, I'm Asian. This is how we roll.
Side passe, and so just thank you for giving me language to even help contextualize my own life and my own background, like that choosing the path of life. I've never heard it packaged that way, and I'm going to be taking that moving forward as part of my own story to help understand myself, so thank you.
I love you. I lead with love. I really do.
That's so good.
Yes.
I have a very light question for you.
Great, because I'm trying to suck up the tears, get the sweat off my brow.
I mean, first of all, I want to bottle you up and take you home with me.
Let's go. You look like fun.
Simple question. You went from finance, fancy stuff. I mean, I guess you're still kind of touching on that, but like, what was the day that you were like, you know what? No more scars. I want to go into tech.
Oh God, wow.
I mean, what?
You want to know? You really want to know?
Yes, please.
Okay, how much time do you have? I'll keep it brief. Okay, this is, talk about trauma. So honestly, I was 27 years old, and I remember it was Christmas Day, and I was suffering, believe it or not, because you know how effervescent I am, I was suffering from severe depression, and I was suicidal, straight the fuck up. And I remember I would fantasize, because I'm from here, about jumping off the train platform, and that would be how I did it. And I know that sounds bananas, right? But I'm gonna keep it 100 that. And I was dealing with this for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And I remember Christmas Day of 2007, I was curling my hair. And as crazy as this sounds, I remember burning myself. And it was not, I was so checked out of life, I was so like out of it. Like literally, it was like I was not in my body. And I feel like whenever I think about this, I think about my soul jumping out of my body, burning and saying, wake the fuck up. Like no lie. And I had this massive second-degree burn from a goddamn curling iron of all things. But it was literally like, I was like, I don't remember it, but I think it must have been like this. Like it was like this. I don't remember doing it. I just remember like whoa. But that snapped me out of depression. The pain, as crazy as it sounds, made me feel so alive. And I was like, what do we need to do? I was just like, I woke up, I was like, okay, what do we need to do? What do we do? And immediately I was like, okay, at this time I was doing an entrepreneurial, I had an entrepreneurial role with my ex-husband. You see how that went? And I was like, I need a job. I was like, I'm going back to corporate, like this is it. We gotta figure it out. And not to gross you out, but I remember with the burn, you know, the nerve cells, when they're regenerating, that's when you feel the pain the most. You don't necessarily feel it like when it happens, because it's like, there's nothing there. That's alive. It's all, you know, burned. So I remember being up in the middle of the night and the pain being so excruciating that I could not like go to sleep. And I'd be like, well, what can I do? And I was like, well, let me go online and let me start researching. And I started like researching jobs and researching industries and blah, 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 blah. And I remember, and it's so funny because like, I ended up working for LinkedIn years later, But I was on LinkedIn and I came across an executive search firm that specialized in placing women in sales. And so I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. So I reached out to them, got an appointment, went and met with them. And they said, okay, Lisa, great. Like, we've got 2 opportunities for you. One is in publishing. At that point, I had a lot of experience selling ads, in publishing, blah, blah, blah. And like, one is in tech. And, you know, this is, again, when we talk about like future-proofing ourselves, what is the next 10 years? What are the next 20 years? I knew that the publishing industry was contracting. And so I knew that the life cycle in that industry had a expiration date. And I said, tech, on the other hand, you know, this is a burgeoning industry. This is Silicon Alley days for real in 2007. And I was like, okay, like, I think that's gonna make sense. But I was mad scared. You know, like, that's why I said about courage. Like, you cannot eradicate fear, but you can act in the face of fear, and that's courage. And so thankfully, I was able to like bring myself to go on the interview. I ended up getting both of the jobs, and I chose the tech job as a result of applying that thought process. And so that's how I started my career.
Thank you.
Goodness gracious.
That's how it started, yeah.
I'm gonna keep going.
I don't have a comment. I'm sorry, I don't have a question, I have a comment. You know, you started off and you were the Oprah of tech. You're the
Well, she said that, I didn't.
You're the Lisa of tech.
Oh,
You're
on the Fancyfied
person.
web for,
You know what I mean? You're your own person, and I appreciate what you've said here today, and it's helped to inspire me, so.
Oh. Uplift, empower, inspire, and unite. That means so much. And like that moniker, you know, I kind of like, I have been given it, but to your point around like your individuality and being original and indexing on that, we'll take out the bio.
If there was any counsel that you would give to your younger self, what would it be?
Okay, I want to show you something. So check out my phone, because I'm very big on like how do you be and function from a space of perpetual optimization, right? So I have this thing where on my phone it's like, and this is like an actual strategy. It's like 4-year-old or 3-year-old me, and I look at her, and to your point, I say, I got you. You know, I got you because you got you. You know, and like, yeah, because I dealt with a lot of trauma. And so it's like, I'm not gonna pretend like it didn't happen. I did that, and that got me into a marriage where I got more of that. And so it's really important to be deliberate in the most simplistic of ways. But I say to her, when I look at her eyes, I'm like, those are my eyes, you know, and like, I still do my hair in pigtails. But yeah, I would say, I got you because you got you. And I know you, right? We know each other? Okay, maybe. I'm gonna give you a hug too, it's fine. We know each other now.
I feel like it's because our childhoods are similar in coming from immigrant parents, and then they just doing what they know, unintentionally. And as women who are breaking the generational curses, it is very traumatic and heavy to carry that and to be the leaders in our family to break that, because you're constantly fighting against your family to break what we have always done, right? So I'm asking, how are you refilling yourself to make sure you still have more to give, more love to give? Because for me, I've had to do different work to make sure I can still feel full to help my family. And I'm the younger one, I'm like the firstborn, the newer generation. So they're coming to me, the old heads, to like, for me to help them, not the old heads, no respect, but like, like my elders are coming to me and I'm helping them, but then I'm trying to make sure I'm helping myself too. So how are you?
Great question.
That is a great question, and I'm open to whatever suggestions you have. I'm a work in progress. It's so funny because I know this might sound crazy. I'm trained for triathlon right now. Yeah. No, girl,
Things you do.
But I say that to say the reason why I chose to do the triathlon, you would think that it's like physical. It's not about the physicality as much as it is about the mental fortitude required to push yourself, to increase your capacity, to bring yourself to run the 6 miles, ride the 22 miles, swim the mile. What's 26 miles? Anyway, but saying that to say, like, you know, I have to like find new ways to like push myself in ways that are like restorative for me, because I'm an athlete and also I have like tons of energy. So it's like really important that I channel that energy and like be very intentional about the things that will allow me to channel that energy in constructive ways. And I will also add that like family is really important. In my biological family, I'm not only the black sheep, there's like almost a level of I'm ostracized to some degree. I don't think it's intentional per se, it's just that they don't get me, you know what I mean? Like I'm like a poet and like fashion and artist, and then I'm in tech, and then I'm a founder, and it's like all these things. It's like, who the are you, lady? Pick an identity and go with it. But to say that to say, like, within my family, I sort of meet everyone where they're at. I've given up on trying to be like, maybe this way, maybe that way, you know? Like, it's exhausting, and it's like ultimately their choice. So it's like you get to be who you are, and if folks are inspired, like the young lady back there who's inspired, then like great, and if not, it's great too. But my friends are my family. They show yeah, they're here, okay? They're out here. And so it's like that level of, you know, mindfulness with respect to who replenishes your cup. You know, it's not just an innate, like, internal thing. Like, as I said, I'm a work in progress. I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of people who love me, who help me. And I couldn't be who I am and what I do without that love. And the last thing I'll say is that it also gave me a reference point as to what's healthy love and what's not healthy love. I grew up in an environment where there was not a lot of healthy love. But as an adult, I get to put myself in environments where there's healthy love. I got Nina, I got Joelle, I got Kathleen, I got Chantel, they're my people. They love me, they protect me. And we protect each other, it's a two-way street. But without that, I couldn't be who I am and do the things that I do. And so I never function from the space of I always function from the space of we.
Can you please clap for Lisa? Unfortunately, at the end of the session, but we don't, because we're going to a gala, we get to talk to each other, and we'll keep it going. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you so much.
Seriously.